Sold! The auctioneer's gavel slammed down like a death sentence, and Sophie's knees buckled. $800. That's what her father had just gotten for selling her like a breeding mare. The silk-vested man who'd won her smiled, already reaching for her arm, when a voice cut through the crowd. $1,000! Every head turned. A cowboy she'd never seen before was pushing through the mass of bodies, his jaw set like granite, his eyes locked on hers. Her father's grin widened at the new bid, but the cowboy wasn't looking at him. "You're free now," he said, his voice steady as a promise. "Let's get you out of here." Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs. Freedom? From a stranger who'd just paid a fortune for her? Nothing made sense anymore. Subscribe to our channel and stay until the end to see how Sophie's story unfolds. Comment below with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this journey travels. 200, the auctioneer repeated. His voice carried weight like a judge passing sentence. Do I hear 250? Sophie's father stepped forward, his hand on the auctioneer's shoulder. Tell them about her skills, Harold. Tell them she can cook, clean, work a field better than most men. You hear that, gentlemen? This one's worth every penny. A man in a brown hat raised his hand. 250. Sophie's breath caught. She'd known this moment was coming for 3 days, ever since her father had told her what he planned to do. You'll fetch a good price, he'd said, like she was a piece of furniture he was tired of looking at. She'd begged him. She'd cried. She'd offered to work double, to take on more chores, to do anything that would change his mind. Your mother's dead, he'd said, and I got debts that won't wait. You're 21 years old. Time you made yourself useful. Now here she was, standing on a wooden platform in the center of Hickory Creek's town square, with every eye in the county on her. 300, someone called out. The auctioneer pointed. 300 from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 350? Sophie forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. That's what her mother used to tell her when the world felt too big. Just breathe, sweetheart. Just breathe. But her mother wasn't here anymore. Her mother had died 6 months ago, leaving Sophie alone with a man who saw her as nothing more than a burden with a price tag. 350, a new voice said. Sophie's eyes found the speaker, a heavy-set man with a thick beard and hands like ham hocks. She'd seen him before, at the general store. He'd looked at her the same way then, like she was something to consume. 400, another man countered. Her father smiled. Actually smiled. Sophie's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You proud of yourself? She said, her voice low enough that only he could hear. He didn't turn around. Shut your mouth and look pleasant. You're bringing down your value. 450, the bearded man called out. The auctioneer's eyes gleamed. 450, now we're talking. This is a fine specimen, gentlemen. Young, healthy, strong back for work. Stop talking about me like I'm a cow, Sophie said, louder this time. Her father whipped around, his face dark with warning. I said shut your mouth. 500, someone shouted. The crowd murmured. 500 was serious money. Sophie's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of these men who thought they could buy her like property. 500 going once, the auctioneer said. Sophie's mind raced. She could run. Jump off this platform and run as fast as her legs would carry her. But where would she go? She had no money, no family except the man who was selling her, no friends who could help. Going twice? She closed her eyes. Maybe if she closed her eyes, she could pretend this was all a nightmare. Maybe she'd wake up, and her mother would be there, sitting at the kitchen table, telling her it was all just a bad dream. 600! Sophie's eyes snapped open. The voice had come from the left side of the crowd, from a man wearing a silk vest and a hat that probably cost more than most people in Hickory Creek made in a month. Her father's eyes widened. "Now that's more like it," he muttered. The silk-vested man pushed his way forward. He was older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples and a smile that made Sophie's skin crawl. $600, the auctioneer confirmed. "Do I hear 650? Silence fell over the crowd. 600 was more than most men made in half a year. The bearded man shook his head and stepped back. 600 going once, the auctioneer said, his voice rising with excitement. Sophie's father was practically vibrating with greed. $600. More than enough to pay off his debts and still have money left over for drinking and gambling. Going twice. The silk-vested man smiled up at Sophie. "You'll do just fine," he said, and the way he said it made her stomach turn. 700. Every head in the crowd turned. The new bidder was standing near the back, partially hidden by the mass of bodies. Sophie couldn't see his face. The silk-vested man's smile disappeared. 750, he countered immediately. 800, the unseen bidder said, his voice steady and calm. The crowd erupted in whispers. $800 for a woman was unheard of. Sophie's father looked like he might faint from joy. The silk-vested man hesitated. 800 was a fortune. He glanced at Sophie, then at the crowd, calculating whether she was worth that much. 800 going once, the auctioneer called out. The silk-vested man shook his head and stepped back into the crowd. Going twice. Sophie strained to see who was bidding, but the crowd was too thick. All she could see was movement as people parted to let someone through. Sold, the auctioneer's gavel cracked down like thunder. For $800 to the gentleman in the back. The crowd parted, and Sophie saw him for the first time. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a weathered face that spoke of years spent under the sun. He wore dusty boots, simple clothes, and a hat that had seen better days. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to stop. There was no greed in those eyes, no hunger, just something that looked almost like sadness. Her father grabbed the auctioneer's arm. 800, you said? $800? That's right, Thomas. Congratulations. Looks like you picked a good day to sell. Sophie's father laughed, a sound that made her want to vomit. I told her she'd fetch a good price. Didn't I tell you? He turned to Sophie. Didn't I tell you? She didn't answer. She was still staring at the man who'd just bought her, trying to understand what she saw in his face. The man walked forward, his boots making soft sounds against the packed dirt. When he reached the platform, he held out his hand, not to her father, but to her. My name's Jack Montgomery, he said, and you don't have to be afraid. Sophie stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite her. You just bought me for $800. Why wouldn't I be afraid? Her father moved between them. Now, Sophie, mind your manners. This gentleman here just paid good money for you. Jack's eyes never left Sophie's face. I paid $800 to get you out of here. There's a difference. What kind of difference? Sophie's voice shook, despite her best efforts to keep it steady. The kind where you get to choose what happens next. Her father laughed again, that horrible sound. She don't need to choose nothing. You paid for her, she's yours. That's how this works. Jack finally looked at her father, and something in his expression made the older man take a step back. I know how it works, but that's not how this is going to work. He turned back to Sophie, his hand still extended. My name is Jack Montgomery. I own a ranch about 20 miles north of here. I came to town today for supplies, and I saw what was happening. I don't hold with selling people like livestock, but I also don't hold with leaving someone in a bad situation when I can help. So here's what I'm offering. You come with me to my ranch. You work if you want to work. You stay if you want to stay. You leave if you want to leave. Your choice. Sophie's mind couldn't process what she was hearing. You're saying you spent $800 just to let me go? I'm saying I spent $800 because it was the only way to get you off this platform. What happens after that is up to you. Her father's face had gone from joy to confusion to anger in the span of seconds. Now wait just a minute. You can't just... I can, Jack said, his voice quiet but firm. I paid your price. The transaction's done. What I do with my property is my business. He looked at Sophie. Except you're not property. You're a person. And persons get to make choices. Sophie's legs felt weak. This had to be a trick. Men didn't spend $800 out of kindness. They wanted something. They always wanted something. What's the catch? She asked. Jack lowered his hand, since she clearly wasn't going to take it. No catch. I got a ranch that needs work. You want to work? I'll pay you fair wages. You don't want to work? I'll take you wherever you want to go. But first, we need to get you away from here. Her father grabbed Jack's arm. You can't take her without... Jack's eyes went cold. I already took her. I paid you $800. The auctioneer witnessed it. The whole town witnessed it. She's not yours anymore, Thomas. The crowd had gone silent, watching this exchange like it was better entertainment than the auction itself. Sophie's father's face turned red. You think you're some kind of hero? Is that it? Riding in here, throwing money around? I think your daughter deserves better than this, Jack said. And I think deep down, you know it too. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across her father's face. Shame, maybe, or regret. But then it was gone, replaced by the same cold greed she'd known her whole life. Fine, he said, pulling the wad of bills from the auctioneer's hand. Take her. She's your problem now. Jack turned back to Sophie. I got a horse tied up near the general store. You ready to go? Sophie looked at her father, at the man who was supposed to protect her, to love her, to keep her safe. He was counting his money, not even looking at her. I don't have anything to bring, she said quietly. Then you don't need to bring anything. She stepped down from the platform, her legs shaking so badly she almost fell. Jack caught her elbow, steadying her. Easy, he said. You're all right. They walked through the crowd, and Sophie felt every eye on her. The whisper started immediately. Did you see that? $800 just to let her go. What kind of man does that? Probably wants something worse than the others. Sophie's jaw clenched. Let them whisper. Let them think what they wanted. She was leaving this town, leaving these people, leaving the life that had tried to destroy her. When they reached Jack's horse, a sturdy bay mare with kind eyes, he untied the reins and turned to her. You know how to ride? Some. My mother taught me when I was little. Good. We got about 3 hours before we reach the ranch. You can ride with me, or I can get you your own horse from the stable. Your choice. That word again. Choice. Sophie couldn't remember the last time someone had given her a choice about anything. I'll ride with you, she said, if that's all right. Jack nodded and swung up into the saddle, then held out his hand. This time, Sophie took it. His grip was strong, but gentle, as he pulled her up behind him. She had to put her arms around his waist to keep from falling, and she could feel him tense at the contact. Sorry, she said quickly. I don't mean to. You're fine, he said. Just hold on. We're going to move quick once we're out of town. Why? Jack glanced back at the crowd, where Sophie's father was already talking to a group of men. They were looking in their direction, and their expressions weren't friendly. Because your father just made $800, and some of those men are thinking, They should have bid higher. And some of them are thinking maybe they can take what they want without paying at all. Fear spiked through Sophie's chest. They'd come after us? Maybe, maybe not. But I'd rather not wait to find out. He clicked his tongue, and the horse moved forward at a steady walk. Sophie looked back one last time at Hickory Creek, at the town square where she'd spent the worst day of her life. Her father was still counting his money, not watching her leave. "I hate him," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Is that wrong? To hate your own father?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "I don't think it's wrong to hate someone who treated you like you weren't worth loving." Sophie's throat tightened. She'd never heard anyone say it out loud before. Never heard anyone acknowledge that what her father had done, what he'd been doing her whole life, was wrong. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Why did you spend all that money on me?" "I had a daughter once," Jack said, his voice quiet. "About your age. She died 5 years ago. Fever took her in the winter. And I remember standing next to her grave, thinking about all the times I could have protected her better, could have loved her better, could have been a better father. I can't bring her back. But when I saw you standing on that platform, looking like the whole world had abandoned you, I couldn't walk away. Maybe it's selfish. Maybe I'm trying to make up for what I couldn't do for Sarah. But I meant what I said back there. You get to choose what happens next." Sophie's eyes burned with tears she'd been holding back for hours. "I don't know what to choose. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "You don't have to know right now. First thing is getting you safe. Everything else can wait." They rode in silence for a while, the horse's steady rhythm lulling Sophie into a strange kind of calm. The town disappeared behind them, swallowed by the Texas landscape. "What was she like?" Sophie asked finally. "Your daughter." Jack's shoulders tensed, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "She was stubborn, stubborn as the day is long. Used to argue with me about everything. What time to wake up, what chores needed doing, whether the sky was blue or gray. Drove me half crazy." He paused. "I'd give anything to argue with her one more time." "I'm sorry." "Me too." They rode on, and Sophie found herself relaxing slightly against Jack's back. He smelled like leather and wood smoke, and something else she couldn't quite name. Safety, maybe, or at least the promise of it. "My mother died 6 months ago," she said. "Pneumonia. She'd been sick for years, but she kept working anyway, kept taking care of the house, kept taking care of me, kept trying to make my father happy. Even when she could barely breathe, she was still trying. Sounds like she loved you." "She did. She was the only one who did." "That's not nothing." "I know. But it feels like nothing now that she's gone." Jack shifted in the saddle. The loving doesn't stop just because someone dies. It's still there, still real. My Sarah's been gone 5 years, and I still love her every single day. Sophie's chest ached with something that felt like grief and hope mixed together. "I don't know how to do this, how to be free. I've spent my whole life being told what to do, where to go, how to act. And now you're telling me I can choose? And I don't even know where to start." "Start with the small things," Jack said. "When we get to the ranch, you can choose which room you want. You can choose what you want to eat for supper. You can choose whether you want to work or rest. Small choices. They add up." The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sophie had never paid much attention to sunsets before. There was always too much work to do, too many chores demanding her attention. But now, sitting on this horse with a stranger who'd saved her from a fate worse than death, she let herself look. "It's beautiful," she said. Yeah, Jack agreed. It is. They rode until the sky turned dark and stars began to appear overhead. Sophie's body ached from the unfamiliar position, and her mind was spinning with everything that had happened. How much farther? She asked. Another hour. You holding up all right? I'm fine. You're allowed to not be fine, you know. Today was a lot. Sophie almost laughed. That's one way to put it. What would you call it? The worst day of my life, followed immediately by the strangest. Strange how? Strange because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to tell me what you really want, what you expect from me. Nobody spends $800 out of pure kindness. Jack was quiet for so long, Sophie thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, I expect you to heal. That's all. I expect you to figure out who you are when nobody's telling you what to be. And maybe, if you decide to stay, I expect you to help me run a ranch. But that's work, and work gets paid. Fair wages for fair labor. Nothing more, nothing less. And if I decide not to stay? Then I'll take you wherever you want to go. What if I don't know where I want to go? Then you can stay until you figure it out. Sophie rested her forehead against Jack's back, exhaustion finally catching up with her. You're either the kindest man I've ever met, or the craziest. Can it be both? This time Sophie did laugh, a small sound that felt foreign in her throat. When was the last time she'd laughed? Before her mother died, probably. Before her father had looked at her with calculating eyes and decided she was worth more sold than kept. Thank you, she said softly, for what you did today. Whatever happens next, thank you for getting me off that platform. You're welcome, Jack said, and somehow Sophie believed he meant it. The ranch appeared like a shadow against the moonlit sky, and Sophie's grip on Jack's waist tightened without thinking. That's it, Jack said. Home. Home. The word felt strange. Sophie hadn't had a real home since her mother died. Just a house where she slept and worked and tried to stay invisible. Jack dismounted first, then helped her down. Her legs almost gave out when her feet hit the ground. Steady, he said, his hand on her elbow again. You've been riding for hours. Take a minute. Sophie nodded, not trusting her voice. Now that they were here, the reality of her situation was crashing down on her. She was at a stranger's ranch, miles from anywhere, with no money and nowhere else to go. You're thinking too loud, Jack said. What? I can hear you thinking, worrying about what comes next. He tied the horse to a post. Stop it. Tonight, all you need to do is eat something and sleep. Everything else waits until morning. I don't know how to stop worrying. Practice. Jack gestured toward the house. Come on, I'll show you where you can sleep. The house was small but solid. Jack lit a lamp, and warm light filled the main room. Sophie saw a table, chairs, a fireplace with cold ashes. Kitchen's through there, Jack said, pointing. 2 bedrooms down that hall. You can take the one on the right. It was Sarah's. Sophie froze. I can't take your daughter's room. She's not using it. Jack's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sophie heard the pain underneath. And it's got a good bed and a door that locks from the inside. You'll be safe there. A lock? I told you. Your choice. That includes choosing who gets to come into your space and who doesn't. Sophie's throat tightened again. She'd never had a door that locked before. Never had a space that was truly hers. Thank you, she managed. Jack moved toward the kitchen. You hungry? Starving. Good. I got some stew left from yesterday. It's not fancy, but it'll fill you up. Sophie followed him into the kitchen, watching as he reheated the pot over the stove. The silence between them felt different now. Less frightening. More waiting. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said. "Go ahead." "Why aren't you married? A man with a ranch, with land, with—" She trailed off, not sure how to finish. Jack stirred the stew slowly. "I was married. Sarah's mother. She died bringing Sarah into the world. I raised Sarah alone for 16 years, and then she died too. After that, I didn't see much point in trying again." "That's lonely." "Yeah, it is." He ladled stew into 2 bowls. "But loneliness is better than losing someone else. Safer." "That's no way to live." Jack looked at her, and something in his expression made Sophie's heart skip. "You're right. It's not. But knowing that and changing it are 2 different things." They ate in silence. The stew was simple but good, and Sophie realized she hadn't eaten all day. She was halfway through her 2nd bowl when she heard the sound. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses. Coming fast. Jack's head snapped up. "Get in Sarah's room. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you." "What's—" "Now, Sophie." The command in his voice sent her running. She just reached the bedroom and turned the lock when she heard pounding on the front door. "Montgomery, open up!" Sophie pressed her ear to the door, her heart hammering. "It's late, Thomas," Jack's voice came through. "Whatever you want can wait until morning." Her father. Sophie's blood went cold. "You got something that belongs to me." "I got nothing that belongs to you. I paid you $800. We both know it. That was before I knew what you were planning." Sophie heard the door open. "What I'm planning," Jack said, his voice deadly calm, "is none of your business. She's my daughter. She was your daughter, right up until you sold her for $800 in front of the whole town." "I want her back." Sophie's hands clenched into fists. Of course he wanted her back. Not because he loved her. Not because he cared. Because he'd figured out he could sell her again for more. "No," Jack said simply. "I wasn't asking. And I wasn't unclear. Get off my property, Thomas. There's 4 of us out here. You really want to do this?" 4? Sophie's mind raced. Her father had brought help. The men from the auction, probably. The ones who'd wanted to bid higher. "I really want you gone," Jack said. "How that happens is up to you. Just let me talk to her. Let me talk to Sophie." "No. She's my blood, my daughter." "Your daughter that you sold like livestock. Your daughter that you stood next to on that platform and didn't even look at while men bid on her like she was a piece of meat. You lost the right to call her your daughter the minute that auctioneer's gavel came down." Sophie heard footsteps, multiple sets. They were coming inside. "Last warning, Thomas," Jack said, and something in his voice made Sophie shiver. "Turn around and leave, while you still can. Or what, you'll shoot us, 4 against 1? I don't need to shoot you. I just need you to think about what happens next. You force your way in here, you try to take Sophie, and one of 2 things happens. Either I stop you, and you end up explaining to Sheriff Watson why you were trespassing and trying to kidnap a woman who's legally under my care. Or you succeed, and you drag Sophie back to town, and everyone in Hickory Creek gets to see what kind of man you really are. The kind who sells his daughter once and then steals her back to sell her again." Silence. Sophie could almost feel her father thinking, calculating the angles. "You can't prove that's what I'm doing." "Can't I? Because I'm pretty sure Harold the auctioneer will remember you counting that $800 with a smile on your face. And I'm pretty sure the whole crowd will remember you telling Sophie she'd fetch a good price. You want to test whether they'll believe you or me?" More silence. Then her father's voice, tight with rage. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is. It's been over since I handed you that money. You just didn't know it yet." Sophie heard footsteps retreating, then the sound of horses riding away. She waited, barely breathing, until Jack's voice came through the door. "Sophie, they're gone. You can come out." She unlocked the door with shaking hands. Jack was standing in the hallway, and in the lamplight she could see the tension in his shoulders, the tight set of his jaw. "They'll come back," she said. "Maybe. Maybe not. You don't know my father. He doesn't let things go." Jack's eyes met hers. "Then he's going to learn to, because I don't let things go either." Sophie felt something shift inside her chest. "Why are you doing this? Really? And don't tell me it's because of Sarah. There's more to it than that." Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When Sarah died, I blamed myself. Blamed myself for not getting the doctor faster, for not knowing she was that sick, for not being able to save her. And I spent 5 years alone on this ranch, trying to punish myself by not letting anyone close. But watching you on that platform today, I realized something. The best way to honor Sarah's memory isn't to hide from the world. It's to do what I couldn't do for her. Protect someone who needs protecting." "I'm not your daughter." "No, you're not. But you're a person who deserves better than what life's given you. And I'm a person who can help. That's enough." Sophie's eyes burned. "What if I can't pay you back? What if I can't ever repay what you've done?" "I'm not keeping score." Jack's voice softened. "You don't owe me anything, Sophie. That's the whole point." "Everyone wants something." "Yeah. I want you to be safe. I want you to have a chance to figure out who you are without someone telling you what you're worth. That's what I want." Sophie wiped at her eyes angrily. She'd cried more in the past few hours than she had in months. "I don't know how to do this, how to just accept help." "You don't have to know. You just have to try." A thought struck Sophie, cold and sharp. "What if he files a complaint? What if he goes to the sheriff and says you kidnapped me?" Jack shook his head. "He won't." "How do you know?" "Because I know Sheriff Watson. We served together in the war, and I know for a fact he doesn't hold with selling people, no matter what the law might say about fathers and daughters. Your father tries to make trouble. He's going to find himself in more trouble than he bargained for." "You planned this, the whole thing. You knew he might come after us." "I hoped he wouldn't, but I prepared for him to." Jack's expression was grim. "Men like your father, they only understand power. So I made sure I had more of it than him." "That's why you said all that. About the auctioneer, about the crowd, about making him look bad." "That's why I said it. Your father cares about his reputation more than he cares about you. Sad truth, but it's the truth. Long as I can threaten that reputation, he'll stay away." Sophie felt something like relief wash through her. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since about 5 minutes after I saw you on that platform. I'm good at thinking on my feet." Comes from years of dealing with cattle and weather and all the other things that don't go according to plan. You're good at a lot of things, it seems. Jack's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "I'm good at surviving. Everything else is just details." "Teach me." "What?" "Teach me how to survive. How to be like you. Strong. Not afraid." "Sophie, I'm afraid all the time. The difference is I don't let fear make my decisions for me." "Then teach me that." Jack studied her face for a long moment. "All right, but not tonight. Tonight you need to rest." "I don't think I can sleep." "Try anyway. Your body needs it, even if your mind doesn't think so." Sophie nodded slowly. "Will you be here in the morning?" "I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." Sophie turned back toward the bedroom, then stopped. "Jack, What you said to my father? About me being legally under your care? What did you mean? Jack's expression went carefully neutral. In the eyes of the law, when I bought you from your father, I became responsible for you. Like a guardian, or a husband. The word hung in the air between them. I'm not your wife, Sophie said, her voice sharp. I know that, and I don't want you to be. That's not what this is. But legally, it's the closest thing to what actually happened. And it means your father can't touch you without going through me first. So I traded one man's control for another's. Jack's jaw tightened. No, that's not, isn't it? I still can't go where I want. I still can't make my own decisions. I'm still someone's property. You're not my property. Then what am I? You're a person trying to figure out what comes next. Same as me. Same as everyone. But you control where I live, where I go, what I do. Only if you let me. Jack's voice was intense now. Sophie, listen to me. I bought you out of that auction because it was the only way to get you free. But that doesn't mean you belong to me. It means you're under my protection until you decide you don't need it anymore. You want to leave tomorrow? Leave. You want to stay? Stay. You want to work? Work. You want to rest? Rest. The legal words don't change the real truth. You're free. Maybe not in the eyes of the law, but in every way that matters. Sophie wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. How do I know you mean that? You don't. Not yet. But you will. Give it time. Time. That's all I'm asking for. Time to prove I'm telling you the truth. Sophie's exhaustion was catching up with her, making her thoughts fuzzy. I'm tired. I know. Go to bed. We'll talk more in the morning. She went into the bedroom and closed the door, then locked it out of habit. The room was small but clean. The bed looked soft. Sophie sat on the edge of it, her mind spinning. She'd gone from being auctioned off to being, what? Saved? Protected? Owned in a different way? She didn't know. Couldn't know. Not yet. But Jack had given her a locked door, had sent her father away, had promised her time. That was something. Maybe not everything, but something. Sophie lay down without undressing, too tired to care about propriety. The bed was soft, softer than anything she'd slept on in years. She closed her eyes, expecting to lie awake for hours. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory came rushing back. The auction, Jack, the ride, her father's visit in the night. Sophie sat up, her body aching from yesterday's ride. She could hear movement in the kitchen. Jack, probably, making breakfast. She stood, smoothed her dress as best she could, and unlocked the door. Jack was standing at the stove, frying eggs. He looked up when she entered. Morning. You sleep? Better than I expected. Good. You want coffee? Please. He poured her a cup, and Sophie wrapped her hands around it, letting the warmth seep into her skin. I've been thinking, Jack said, about what you said last night. About not knowing what comes next. And I think we need to lay out some ground rules. Not rules like I'm giving you orders. Rules like agreements. Between equals. Sophie's eyebrows rose. Equals? That's right. Here's what I'm proposing. You stay here as long as you need to. You work if you want to work, and if you do, I pay you fair wages. Same as I pay any ranch hand. You keep your own money. Spend it how you want. You want to leave? You leave. No questions asked. You want to stay? You stay. Your choice. And what do you get out of this? Jack flipped the eggs. I get help running this ranch. I get company. I get to feel like I'm doing something worthwhile instead of just hiding from the world. Fair trade, as I see it. Sophie sipped her coffee, thinking. What about my father? What about him? He's not going to give up. You know that. Then we'll deal with it. Together. Together. That's right. You're not alone in this, Sophie. Not anymore. Sophie felt that shift in her chest again, like something was cracking open. I don't know how to trust people. Then we'll start small. Trust me to make you breakfast. Trust me to keep my word about the locked door. Trust me to pay you if you work. Small things. They add up. The same words he'd said about choices. Small things that add up. Okay, Sophie said quietly. I'll try. Jack smiled, and it transformed his whole face. That's all anyone can do. He slid eggs onto a plate and handed it to her. Sophie took it, sat down at the table, and started to eat. For the first time and longer than she could remember, the future didn't feel quite so terrifying. Sophie finished her eggs and looked up at Jack. So what happens now? What does working on a ranch actually mean? Jack refilled his coffee. Depends. You know anything about cattle? I know they're big, and they smell. That's a start. He sat down across from her. I got about 50 head right now. Need checking on daily, need feeding when the grass runs low, need doctoring when they get sick. Then there's the horses, the chickens, the garden that's half dead because I can't keep up with it, fences that need mending, a barn roof that's got a leak, and about 100 other things I've been putting off because there's only one of me. That's a lot. That's ranch life. Never enough hours in the day. But you don't have to do all of it, or any of it. We can start small. See what you're good at, what you like, what you hate. Sophie's hands tightened around her coffee cup. I'm good at hard work. My mother made sure of that. Hard work's different from smart work. You can kill yourself working hard and get nowhere. Smart work means knowing what needs doing first and what can wait. Teach me smart work, then. Jack's eyes crinkled at the corners. All right. First lesson starts now. The chickens need feeding, and the eggs need collecting. Think you can handle that? I've fed chickens before. Good, because they're mean little creatures, and they'll peck you if you're not careful. Sophie stood up. Where do I find them? Coop's out back. Feed's in the barn. I'll show you. They walked outside, and Sophie felt the morning sun on her face. It was warm already, promising a hot day ahead. Jack led her to a small wooden structure where a dozen chickens scratched at the ground. Watch this one, he said, pointing to a large red hen. She's the boss. You want to stay on her good side. Sophie scattered feed, and the chickens swarmed around her feet. The red hen pecked at her boot. She's testing you, Jack said. Show her you're not afraid. Sophie nudged the hen away with her foot. The chicken squawked, but backed off. Good. Now the eggs. There's a basket by the door. Sophie collected eggs carefully, remembering how her mother had taught her. The red hen watched her with suspicious eyes, but didn't attack. Not bad for your first day, Jack said, when she emerged with a full basket. You're a natural. It's just chickens. Everything starts somewhere. Tomorrow we'll try something harder. They walked back toward the house, and Sophie felt something unfamiliar settling over her. Peace, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. Then she saw the rider. He was coming up the road fast, dust kicking up behind his horse. Jack saw him too, and his whole body tensed. Get inside, he said quietly. Who is it? Don't know yet, but I don't like the way he's riding. Sophie's heart started hammering again. Is it my father? Too small. Go inside, Sophie, now. She ran for the house, the basket of eggs clutched against her chest. Once inside, she set the basket down and pressed herself against the wall next to the window, watching. The rider pulled up short in front of Jack. He was young, maybe 25, wearing a badge that caught the sunlight. "You Jack Montgomery?" the rider called out. "I am. Who's asking?" "Deputy Miller, Sheriff Watson sent me." Sophie's breath caught. The sheriff. This was it. Her father had gone to the law after all. "What's Watson want?" Jack's voice was calm, but Sophie could see the tension in his shoulders. "Got a complaint filed this morning. Thomas Collins says you kidnapped his daughter." "That's a lie." "Maybe, maybe not, but the sheriff wants to hear your side of it." Jack crossed his arms. "My side's simple. I paid Thomas Collins $800 for his daughter at a public auction yesterday. He took the money, I took the girl. Perfectly legal transaction." "That's what the auctioneer said too, but Collins is claiming you coerced him, says you threatened him into selling." "Threatened him how? By offering more money than anyone else?" The deputy shifted in his saddle. "Look, Montgomery, I'm just delivering a message. Sheriff wants you and the girl to come into town. Answer some questions. Clear this up." "And if I say no?" "Then I got to bring you in anyway. Sheriff's orders." Sophie's hands clenched into fists. She'd known this would happen. Known her father wouldn't give up. And now Jack was going to get in trouble because of her. She walked outside before she could talk herself out of it. "Sophie, get back inside," Jack said. "No." She looked at the deputy. "You want to ask questions? Ask me. I'll tell you exactly what happened." The deputy's eyes widened slightly. "You're Sophie Collins?" "I'm Sophie. I don't know if I'm still a Collins. Not sure I want to be." "Miss, your father says you were taken against your will." Sophie laughed, a bitter sound. "My father stood next to me on that auction platform and sold me to the highest bidder. He counted his $800 with a smile on his face. The only thing taken against my will was my freedom when he decided I was worth more sold than kept. Jack Montgomery gave me that freedom back." The deputy looked uncomfortable. "That may be, but nothing. You want to arrest someone? Arrest my father for selling his own daughter like she was a cow at market. You want to ask questions? Ask the whole town who was there yesterday. Ask them if Jack coerced anyone or if he just paid what my father was asking." "Miss Collins, it's just Sophie. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here." Jack put a hand on her shoulder. "Sophie, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I'm not running. Not from this. Not from him." The deputy sighed. "Sheriff's not going to like this." "Then tell the sheriff to come out here himself if he wants to talk to us," Jack said. "Because we're not leaving this ranch." "That's not how this works, Montgomery." "That's how it's going to work. Watson knows where I live. He wants answers, he can ride out here and ask. But I'm not bringing Sophie back to town where her father can get his hands on her again." The deputy's jaw tightened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No. Thomas Collins made this hard when he decided to sell his daughter. I'm just trying to clean up his mess." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the deputy nodded slowly. "I'll tell the sheriff what you said. But Montgomery, you better hope he's in an understanding mood." "Watson's a good man. He'll see sense." "For your sake, I hope you're right." The deputy turned his horse and rode away. Sophie watched until he disappeared over the hill, her heart still racing. "You shouldn't have done that," Jack said quietly. "Done what?" "Come out here. Confronted him. You could have stayed hidden." "I'm tired of hiding. Tired of letting other people speak for me." Sophie's voice shook, but stayed strong. "My whole life, People have told me what to do, where to go, how to act. My father, the preacher, the town gossips. Everyone had an opinion about who I should be. Well, I'm done with that. If the sheriff wants to talk to me, he can talk to me. But I'm going to tell him the truth. And the truth is that you saved me. Jack's expression softened. You're braver than you think. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. That's what brave is, being terrified and doing it anyway. Sophie's laugh was shaky. Then I must be the bravest person alive. Maybe you are. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Jack said, We should get ready. Watson will probably be here by tomorrow. Maybe sooner. What do we need to get ready for? The truth. Your father's going to lie. He's going to make himself look like the victim and me look like the criminal. We need to be ready to counter that. Sophie's stomach twisted. He'll say I'm lying too, that you've manipulated me somehow. Probably. But the auctioneer will back us up, and half the town was there. Your father can't lie his way out of that many witnesses. You don't know him. He's good at lying. He's been lying his whole life. Jack's eyes hardened. Then we'll be better at telling the truth. They spent the rest of the morning preparing. Jack wrote down everything that had happened, every detail of the auction, every word that was spoken. Sophie did the same, her hand cramping as she wrote out her version of events. This feels wrong, she said, staring at her pages. Like I'm the one on trial. You're not on trial. Your father is. Then why do I feel guilty? Jack set down his pen. Because he spent 21 years making you feel like everything was your fault. Like you were a burden. Like you owed him something for the privilege of existing. But you don't owe him anything, Sophie. Not loyalty, not obedience, and definitely not silence. He's still my father. Being a father is more than biology. It's about protecting your child, loving them, putting their needs above your own. Thomas Collins didn't do any of that. He's not a father. He's just a man who happened to contribute to your birth. Sophie's eyes burned. My mother used to say he wasn't always like this, that he used to be different. Before the drinking, before the gambling, before she got sick. Maybe he was, but people change, and the man he is now, that's who we're dealing with, not who he used to be. I keep thinking maybe if I'd been better, worked harder, complained less, maybe he wouldn't have... Stop! Jack's voice was sharp. Don't do that to yourself. Nothing you did or didn't do made him sell you. That was his choice, his failure, not yours. Sophie wiped at her eyes angrily. I hate that I still care what he thinks. I hate that part of me still wants him to love me. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. It feels like weakness. It's not. Wanting to be loved by your parents is the most natural thing in the world. The fact that your father couldn't give you that says everything about him and nothing about you. Sophie's throat tightened. How do you know all this? Because I spent 5 years blaming myself for Sarah's death. Telling myself if I'd been smarter, faster, better, she'd still be alive. And one day I realized I was torturing myself for something I couldn't control. Your father's choices aren't your responsibility. They're his. Did you really stop blaming yourself? Most days. Some days it creeps back in, but I'm getting better at pushing it away. Teach me how. Jack managed a small smile. I'm still learning myself, but we can figure it out together. The sound of hoofbeats interrupted them. Multiple horses this time. Sophie's heart jumped into her throat. Jack moved to the window. It's Watson, and he brought company. Sophie joined him at the window. She counted 5 riders. The sheriff, the deputy from earlier, and 3 men she didn't recognize. Who are the others? She asked. Town council, probably. They'll want to witness whatever happens next. This is really happening. Yeah, it is. You ready? Sophie took a deep breath. No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl. The word sent warmth through Sophie's chest. My girl. Not like property, like belonging, like family. They walked outside together. The sheriff dismounted first. He was an older man, maybe 50, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Jack, he said, nodding. Watson. Been a while. Too long. Heard you pulled something interesting yesterday. Depends on your definition of interesting. The sheriff's eyes moved to Sophie. You must be Sophie Collins. Just Sophie. Just Sophie, then. Your father filed a complaint. Says Jack here kidnapped you. My father's a liar. One of the council members, a thin man with spectacles, cleared his throat. That's a serious accusation, young lady. So is kidnapping, but at least mine's true. The sheriff's mouth twitched like he was fighting a smile. Why don't you tell me what happened? In your own words. Sophie glanced at Jack. He nodded encouragement. She took a breath and started talking. She told them everything. The auction, the bidding, her father's smile when he counted his money, Jack's offer of freedom, the ride to the ranch, her father's attempt to take her back. She didn't cry, didn't break down, just told the truth in a clear, steady voice. When she finished, the council members were looking uncomfortable. The sheriff's expression was unreadable. That's quite a story, Watson said. It's not a story, it's what happened. I believe you, but your father's version is different. Says Jack threatened him. Says he only took the money because he was afraid. Afraid of what? Jack didn't have a gun, didn't raise his voice, just offered more money than anyone else. Your father claims Jack has some kind of hold over you, that you're defending him because you're scared. Sophie laughed, a harsh sound. The only person I'm scared of is my father, and I'm not even scared of him anymore. I'm just done. Done with what? Done with being treated like property. Done with being told what I'm worth. Done with letting him control my life. The thin council member spoke up. But legally, your father has rights. You're his daughter. Legally, he sold those rights for $800, Jack said. The whole town witnessed it. That's not how the law works, Montgomery. Then maybe the law needs to change. Watson held up a hand. Everyone calm down. This isn't getting us anywhere. He looked at Sophie. What do you want? If you could decide how this ends, what would you choose? Sophie didn't hesitate. I want to stay here. I want to work for Jack. I want to never see my father again. That's what I want. And if we can't give you that, if the law says you have to go back, then the law is wrong. The sheriff studied her face for a long moment. Then he turned to Jack. You really spend $800 just to free her? I did. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. That's a lot of money for doing the right thing. Some things are worth it. Watson nodded slowly. I served with Jack in the war, saved my life twice. I know what kind of man he is. He looked at the council members. And I know what kind of man Thomas Collins is. I've arrested him 3 times for drunk and disorderly. Seen him gamble away money his family needed for food. Watched him treat his wife like dirt until she died. The thin man adjusted his spectacles. That doesn't change the fact that it changes everything. Because I'm the sheriff, and I'm the one who decides whether there's enough evidence to pursue charges. And I'm telling you right now, there isn't. Sophie's heart leaped. You mean? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is a private matter between Jack and Thomas. Jack paid the agreed price at a public auction. Sophie's of age. She can choose where she wants to live and who she wants to work for. Thomas doesn't like it. That's his problem. The council members exchanged glances. One of them, a heavy-set man with a red face, spoke up. The town won't like this, Watson. Collins has friends. Collins has drinking buddies. That's not the same thing. And the town can think what it wants. I enforce the law, not public opinion. But nothing. This matter's closed. Sophie's free to stay with Jack if that's her choice. Anyone has a problem with it, they can take it up with me. Sophie felt like she might collapse with relief. Thank you. Watson's expression softened slightly. Don't thank me yet. Your father's not going to take this well. He might cause trouble. Let him try, Jack said quietly. I can handle Thomas Collins. See that you do, because if this turns into something bigger, I can't protect you. Understood. The sheriff mounted his horse. The council members followed, still grumbling among themselves. Watson looked down at Sophie. You sure about this? Once I ride away, that's it. No going back. Sophie met his eyes without flinching. I'm sure. All right then. Good luck to you both. They rode away, leaving Sophie and Jack standing in the dusty yard. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophie said, Is it really over? This part is, but your father's still out there, still angry. We need to stay alert. I know, but for right now, in this moment, I'm free. Jack's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Yeah, you are. Sophie squeezed back, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Thank you. For everything. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I want to. They stood there, hands linked, as the sun climbed higher in the sky. And for the first time in her life, Sophie felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Sophie pulled her hand away first, suddenly aware of how long they'd been standing there. I should get back to work. Those chickens won't feed themselves tomorrow. Jack cleared his throat. Right, and I got fences to mend on the north pasture. You want to come with? Learn how it's done? You trust me with fences? I trust you to learn. That's different. They walked toward the barn, and Sophie felt the weight of the morning's confrontation starting to lift. The sheriff believed her. Her father's complaint had failed. She was really, truly free. You're smiling, Jack said. Am I? First time I've seen it. Suits you. Sophie's cheeks warmed. I don't smile much. Never had much reason to. Maybe that'll change. They gathered tools, a hammer, nails, wire cutters, new fence posts. Jack loaded everything into a wagon hitched to one of the horses. You ever drive a wagon? He asked. My mother taught me when I was 12. Good. You're driving then. Sophie climbed onto the seat, and Jack handed her the reins. The leather felt familiar in her hands, like greeting an old friend. North pasture's about 2 miles out. Just follow the main trail. Sophie clicked her tongue, and the horse moved forward. Jack sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Tell me about Sarah, Sophie said after a few minutes of silence. What was she like, really? Not just the stubborn part. Jack was quiet so long, Sophie thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, She loved horses. Could ride before she could walk, practically. And she had this laugh that sounded like bells. Used to laugh at everything, even when things were hard. Even when... He trailed off. Even when her mother was gone? Yeah, she never knew her mother. Never had that loss to carry around. But she knew something was missing. Used to ask me about her all the time. What she looked like, how she smiled. Whether she'd be proud of Sarah. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that her mother would have loved her more than anything in the world, that she would have been so proud she might have burst from it. Sophie's throat tightened. My mother was proud of me. Even when I felt like a failure, she'd tell me I was strong, that I was brave. I never believed her. Why not? Because I didn't feel strong or brave. I felt scared all the time. Scared of my father, scared of the future, scared of being alone. And now? Sophie thought about it. Now I'm still scared, but it's different somehow. Like the fear doesn't control me anymore. That's growth. That's you learning to trust yourself. They reached the north pasture, and Sophie pulled the wagon to a stop. Jack jumped down and started unloading supplies. See that section there? He pointed to a stretch of fence where the wire sagged between posts. That's what we're fixing. Posts are rotting, wires come loose. Cattle could push right through if they wanted. Show me what to do. Jack spent the next hour teaching her how to dig out the old post, how to set a new one deep enough that it wouldn't shift, how to string the wire tight and secure it properly. Sophie's hands blistered within the first 30 minutes, but she didn't complain. You're good at this, Jack said, watching her twist wire around a post. Natural talent. Or I'm just stubborn. That too. They worked in comfortable silence, and Sophie found herself relaxing in a way she never had before. This was honest work, work that mattered, work that she chose to do. Can I ask you something? She said, hammering a nail into place. Always. Why didn't you ever remarry? After Sarah's mother died, I mean. You were young. You could have found someone. Jack's hands stilled on the fence post. Never saw the point. Had Sarah to raise. Had the ranch to run. Didn't have time for courting. That's not a real answer. No, I guess it's not. He straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. Truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of losing someone else. Afraid of caring that much and having it ripped away again. Seemed easier to just not try. Is that still true? The being afraid part? Jack met her eyes. I'm working on it. Something in his tone made Sophie's heart skip. She looked away quickly, focusing on the fence. We should finish this section before it gets too hot. Sophie, the wire's not tight enough here. Can you check it? Jack didn't push. He moved to where she'd indicated, tested the tension, nodded approval. They worked until the sun was directly overhead and Sophie's shirt was soaked with sweat. That's enough for today, Jack said. We'll finish the rest tomorrow. You did good work. My hands are screaming. They'll toughen up. Give it time. They loaded the tools back into the wagon, and Sophie climbed onto the seat. Her whole body ached, but it was a good ache, the ache of accomplishment. They were halfway back to the house when Sophie saw the smoke. Jack! Her voice came out strangled. The ranch! Something's burning! Jack's head whipped around. Christ, go! Drive fast! Sophie snapped the reins, and the horse broke into a run. The wagon bounced and rattled over the rough trail, but she didn't slow down. The smoke was getting thicker, darker. Please don't be the house, she whispered. Please don't be the house. They crested the final hill, and Sophie's stomach dropped. It wasn't the house. It was the barn. Flames were already climbing the walls, orange and hungry. The chickens were screaming. The horses were screaming, and Sophie could hear cattle bellowing in panic from somewhere nearby. Jack was off the wagon before it fully stopped. The horses! We have to get the horses out! Sophie jumped down and ran after him. The heat hit her like a wall, searing her lungs. Jack kicked open the barn door, and smoke billowed out. Stay back, he shouted. I'm not staying back. Those animals will die. She ducked under his arm and plunged into the smoke. She couldn't see, could barely breathe, but she could hear the horses. 2 of them, maybe 3, trapped in their stalls. Sophie felt her way along the wall until she found the first stall. The latch was hot enough to burn, but she yanked it open anyway. A mare burst out, wild-eyed with terror, nearly trampling her. "Go!" Sophie screamed. "Get out!" She moved to the next stall. The smoke was so thick now, she couldn't see her own hands. Her lungs were burning, her eyes streaming. She found the latch, pulled it open. Nothing happened. "Come on," she begged. "Please, come on." She felt around in the darkness until her hands found the horse's halter. She pulled, but the animal wouldn't budge. "Sophie!" Jack's voice, somewhere behind her. "We have to go! The roof's coming down!" "There's still a horse in here!" "Leave it! We don't have time!" "I'm not leaving it!" She pulled harder on the halter, putting her whole weight into it. The horse finally moved, stumbling forward. Sophie guided it toward where she thought the door was, praying she had the direction right. She felt fresh air on her face, stumbled forward, and then she was outside. The horse ran past her. Jack grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the barn, just as part of the roof collapsed inward with a roar of flame and sparks. Sophie fell to her knees, coughing so hard she thought she might vomit. Jack's hand was on her back, steadying her. "You're insane," he said, but his voice was shaking. "You could have died in there." "So could you. So could the horses." "Horses can be replaced. You can't." Sophie looked up at the burning barn, then at the 3 horses standing at a safe distance, sides heaving. "Did we get them all?" "Yeah, we got them all." "The chickens?" "Most of them ran when the fire started. The ones that didn't—" He didn't finish. Sophie stood on shaking legs. "How did this happen? We were only gone a few hours." Jack's face had gone hard as stone. This wasn't an accident. "What do you mean?" He walked to the side of the barn that wasn't yet consumed by flames and pointed. Sophie saw it immediately. A pile of oil-soaked rags stacked against the wall. "Someone did this on purpose," he said quietly. "Someone tried to burn us out." Sophie's blood ran cold. "My father." Maybe, maybe not. But whoever it was, they wanted to hurt us. "What do we do?" "First, we make sure this fire doesn't spread to the house. Then, we figure out who's responsible. And then—" His jaw clenched. "Then we make sure it never happens again." They spent the next 2 hours fighting the fire, hauling water from the well, soaking the ground around the barn to keep the flames from spreading. By the time the barn finally collapsed into smoking rubble, Sophie could barely stand. "We should get the sheriff," she said, her voice hoarse from smoke. "We will, tomorrow. Right now we need to secure the property. Make sure whoever did this doesn't come back tonight." They worked until dark, moving the horses to a temporary shelter, gathering the surviving chickens, checking every building for signs of tampering. Sophie's hands were blistered and burned, her clothes were ruined, and every breath hurt. "You should rest," Jack said, as the last light faded from the sky. "So should you." "I will, after I do one more check of the perimeter." "Then I'm coming with you." "Sophie, don't argue. You said we're partners. Partners don't let each other patrol alone in the dark after someone just tried to burn down their barn." Jack looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded instead. "Fine, but stay close and stay quiet. If someone's out there, I don't want them knowing we're coming." They walked the property line in silence, Jack's rifle loaded and ready. Sophie had insisted on carrying a pitchfork, despite Jack's protests that it wouldn't do much good against a gun. "It's better than nothing," she'd said, and he'd stopped arguing. They were near the eastern boundary when Sophie heard it. A twig snapping. Movement in the darkness. Jack heard it too. He raised his rifle, his body tense as a coiled spring. "Who's there?" he called out. "Show yourself, or I start shooting." For a long moment, nothing. Then a voice came from the shadows. Easy, Montgomery. It's just me. A man stepped into the moonlight, hands raised. Sophie recognized him immediately. It was Harold, the auctioneer from town. "What are you doing here?" Jack demanded, rifle still raised. "Came to warn you. Heard some men talking at the saloon tonight. They're planning something. Something bad." Sophie's grip tightened on the pitchfork. What kind of something? Harold's eyes found hers in the darkness. "Your father's put a bounty on you, girl. $500 to any man who brings you back to him. Says you're his property and Jack stole you." "That's insane," Sophie said. "The sheriff already ruled." "Your father doesn't care what the sheriff ruled. He wants you back, and he's willing to pay for it. And there's plenty of men in this county who'll do anything for $500. Jack lowered his rifle slightly. "How many men are we talking about?" "6, maybe 7. They were drinking heavy when I left. Probably planning to move on you in the next day or two." "Why are you telling us this?" Sophie asked. "Why help us?" Harold looked uncomfortable. "Because what your father did at that auction was wrong, and what he's doing now is worse. I may run auctions, but I don't hold with bounties on people, especially not women who've done nothing wrong except try to escape a bad situation." Jack studied him for a long moment. "You could have sent word. Didn't have to risk coming out here in the dark." "I could have. But I wanted you to know I mean it. Wanted you to see my face so you'd know this isn't some trap." "Appreciate it, Harold. Truly." "What are you going to do?" Jack's expression was grim. "Whatever I have to. Sophie's not going back to Thomas. I don't care how many men he sends." "Be careful, Montgomery. These aren't good men your father hired," Harold said, looking at Sophie. "They're the kind who don't ask questions, as long as the money's good." "Then they're the kind who'll run when things get hard," Jack said. "Men who only care about money don't have the stomach for real fighting." Harold nodded slowly. "Hope you're right. Good luck to you both." He disappeared back into the darkness, leaving Sophie and Jack alone. "We need to leave," Sophie said immediately. "Get out of here before they come." "Run where? Your father will just put out another bounty, and another after that. Running doesn't solve the problem." "Then what does?" Jack's eyes were hard in the moonlight. "Ending it, once and for all." "You're talking about confronting my father." "I'm talking about making him understand that you're not his to sell or buy or claim. That if he keeps pushing, he's going to lose more than just you." "He'll never understand that. He only understands money and power." "Then we'll speak his language." Sophie's heart was pounding. "What are you planning?" "Tomorrow morning, we ride into town. We go straight to the sheriff, tell him about the bounty and the barn. We make this public. Make it so your father can't hide behind his lies anymore. And if that doesn't work," Jack's jaw clenched, "then we do whatever comes next. But I promise you this, Sophie, you're not going back to him. Not tomorrow, not ever. Even if I have to stand between you and the whole county." Sophie felt tears stinging her eyes. "Why? Why are you doing all this for me?" Jack turned to face her fully. "Because somewhere in the last 2 days, you stopped being a stranger I saved and started being someone I care about. And I protect the people I care about. That's who I am." "Jack, don't. Don't say anything you're not ready to say. Just know that I mean it. Every word." Sophie wanted to tell him that she cared about him too, that he'd become more than just her savior, more than just her employer. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she said, "Let's go back to the house. We both need rest if we're riding to town tomorrow." They walked back in silence. But this time, when their hands brushed, Sophie didn't pull away. And when they reached the house and Jack checked her room to make sure it was safe, She didn't close the door immediately. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. For the barn, for the horses, for all of it." "Get some sleep, Sophie. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She closed the door, but didn't lock it. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, she felt safe enough not to. But sleep didn't come easy. She lay in bed, listening to the sounds of Jack moving around the house, checking windows, loading his rifle, preparing for war. And she realized, with sudden clarity, that she didn't want to run, didn't want to hide, didn't want to let her father win. She wanted to fight. And she wanted to fight beside Jack. Tomorrow, they would go to town. Tomorrow, they would face whatever came. But tonight, lying in Sarah's room with the smell of smoke still in her hair and blisters on her hands, Sophie Collins made a promise to herself. She would never be sold again. Never be owned. Never be less than what she was, a woman who chose her own path. And if anyone tried to take that from her, they'd have to go through her first. Sophie woke before dawn, her decision from the night before burning even brighter in the morning light. She dressed quickly, braided her hair tight, and walked out to find Jack already saddling 2 horses. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Not much point in trying. You still set on doing this?" "More than ever." Jack nodded, his face grim but determined. "Then let's finish it." They rode in silence as the sun rose, painting the sky blood red. Sophie's hands were steady on the reins, steadier than they'd ever been. Fear still lived in her chest, but it didn't rule her anymore. "When we get there," Jack said, "let me do the talking first. Your father's going to try to provoke you, make you look hysterical or unstable. Don't give him the satisfaction." "I won't. And if things turn violent—" "They won't, not with the sheriff there." Jack's expression said he wasn't so sure, but he didn't argue. They reached Hickory Creek just after 8. The town was already awake, people moving about their morning business. Sophie felt every eye turn toward them as they rode down the main street. "They're staring," she said quietly. "Let them stare. We've got nothing to hide." They tied their horses outside the sheriff's office. Watson was at his desk, coffee in hand, and his eyebrows rose when he saw them. "Didn't expect to see you 2 again so soon." "We got problems," Jack said. "Big ones." Watson gestured to chairs. "Sit. Talk." Sophie told him about the barn, about Harold's warning, about the bounty her father had put on her head. Watson's expression grew darker with every word. $500, he repeated when she finished. "Thomas is serious then." "Dead serious, and he's hired men to collect." Watson stood, grabbed his hat. "That changes things. Putting a bounty on a person is illegal, even if that person is your daughter. And arson? That's a hanging offense if we can prove it." "Harold can testify about the bounty," Jack said. "And we got the oil rags from the barn." "Good. Let's go have a talk with Thomas." They walked 3 abreast down the street, and Sophie felt the town's attention sharpen. People stopped what they were doing to watch. By the time they reached the saloon, where her father spent most of his time, a small crowd had gathered. Watson pushed through the doors. Sophie's father was at a corner table with 3 men she didn't recognize. Hard-looking men, with guns on their hips. "Thomas Collins," Watson said, his voice carrying through the room. "Need a word." Her father looked up, and his eyes went straight to Sophie. Something ugly twisted his features. "What's she doing here?" "She's here to face you," Watson said, "and to hear you answer some questions. Like why you put a bounty on your own daughter's head." The room went silent. Every eye was on them now. "I don't know what you're talking about," her father said, but his voice wasn't steady. Don't lie to me, Thomas. I got witnesses say you offered $500 to anyone who brings Sophie back to you. She's my daughter. I got a right to want her home. You sold that right 2 days ago for $800. The whole town saw it. Her father's face flushed red. That auction was illegal. Montgomery coerced me into— Coerced you how? Watson's voice was sharp. By offering more money than anyone else? That's not coercion, Thomas. That's capitalism. One of the hard-looking men at the table stood up. Sheriff, we don't want any trouble. We were just hired to kidnap a woman against her will. That's a crime. Sit down before I arrest you for conspiracy. The man sat. Her father's hands clenched into fists. She's poisoned you all against me. Can't you see that? She's always been manipulative, always playing the victim. I never asked to be sold like cattle, Sophie said, her voice cutting through his words like a knife. I never asked to stand on that platform while men bid on me like I was property. You did that. You chose that. Don't you dare blame me for the consequences of your choices. You ungrateful little— Careful, Jack said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. You finish that sentence, and sheriff or no sheriff, you and I are going to have a problem. Her father's eyes darted between Jack and Watson. You can't threaten me. I'm the victim here. She's my daughter and he stole her. Nobody stole anybody, Watson said. Jack paid you fair and square. But what you did after? Putting out a bounty? Burning his barn? That's criminal. I didn't burn any barn. Then you won't mind if we search your property for oil and rags that match what we found at the scene. Her father's face went pale. You got no right. I got every right. You're under investigation for arson and attempted kidnapping. You want to make this harder on yourself? Keep talking. Sophie felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Harold the auctioneer standing behind her, along with a dozen other townspeople. Sheriff, Harold said, I got something to say. Watson nodded. Go ahead. I was at the saloon last night. Heard Thomas here offering money to these men to bring Sophie back. Heard him say he didn't care how they did it, long as they got her away from Jack. And I heard him bragging about teaching Montgomery a lesson by burning his barn. Her father shot to his feet. That's a lie. You're all lying. Are we? A woman's voice came from the doorway. Sophie recognized her. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the general store. Because I sold you 3 bottles of lamp oil yesterday morning, Thomas. Said you needed it for cleaning. Thought it was odd since you never clean anything. Another voice joined in. And I saw you riding toward Montgomery's place yesterday afternoon. Recognized your horse. Her father's face went from pale to purple. You're all against me, all of you, just because she's got you fooled with her innocent act. The only act here is yours, Sophie said, and her voice didn't shake. You've spent my whole life making me feel worthless, making me believe I was nothing but a burden. But I'm not worthless, and I'm not a burden. I'm a person who deserves better than what you gave me. I gave you a roof over your head, food in your belly. You gave me the bare minimum, while you spent money on drink and cards. You let my mother work herself to death while you sat at this very table, losing money we didn't have. And when she died, you looked at me and saw one last thing you could sell to cover your debts. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. You were supposed to love me. You were supposed to protect me. Instead, you sold me to the highest bidder and smiled while you counted the money. So don't you dare stand there and pretend you're the victim. Don't you dare. The saloon was dead silent. Her father's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Then a new voice spoke from the back of the room. She's right, Thomas. Everyone turned. An elderly man was pushing through the crowd. Someone Sophie vaguely recognized but couldn't place. "Who are you?" Watson asked. "Name's Robert Mitchell. I'm the town banker, and I think everyone here should know that Thomas Collins owes this bank nearly $2,000 in gambling debts. Money he's been unable to pay for months." Her father's eyes went wide.
"Robert, you can't."
"Can't what? Tell the truth? That you've been borrowing against property you don't own? That you falsified loan applications, claiming you had assets when you had nothing but a daughter you planned to sell?" Sophie felt the ground shift under her feet. $2,000? That's right. The $800 he got from your sale barely made a dent. And when he realized you weren't coming back, he decided to get you back and sell you again. Maybe to someone who'd pay more. Her father lunged for the banker, but the sheriff and Jack grabbed him. "Let me go! This is none of your business!" "It became my business when you committed fraud with my bank's money," Mitchell said coldly. "Sheriff, I'm pressing charges. Fraud, forgery, and anything else that applies." Watson nodded grimly. "Thomas Collins, you're under arrest." "No, you can't do this. Sophie, tell them. Tell them you'll come home, and we can work this out." Sophie looked at the man who was supposed to be her father. The man who'd sold her, tried to steal her back, burned down Jack's barn, and would have done worse if he'd gotten the chance. "I don't have a home with you," she said quietly. "I never did. You made sure of that." Watson and his deputy hauled her father toward the door. He was screaming now, cursing, making threats. But Sophie didn't flinch. She stood tall, Jack's hand steady on her shoulder, and watched her father be taken away. The crowd began to disperse, but several people stopped to speak to Sophie first. "You're a brave girl," Mrs. Patterson said. "Braver than most." "What you said in there," Harold added, "that took real courage." One by one, they offered their support. Some apologized for not seeing what her father was sooner. Others promised to help rebuild Jack's barn. By the time the saloon was empty, except for Sophie, Jack, and the sheriff, Sophie felt like a weight had been lifted from her chest.
"What happens now?" she asked Watson.
Now Thomas goes to trial, faces charges for fraud, arson, and attempted kidnapping. If the judge is fair, he'll spend the next few years in prison. If he's not, Watson shrugged, either way, he won't be bothering you anymore.
"Thank you for believing me."
"I didn't just believe you. I knew you were telling the truth. Thomas has been a problem in this town for years. About time someone called him on it." Watson tipped his hat and left. Sophie and Jack stood alone in the empty saloon. "You all right?" Jack asked. Sophie thought about it. "Yeah, I think I am. Is that strange? That I don't feel worse about my father going to prison?" "Not strange at all. You're allowed to feel relief when someone who hurt you faces consequences." "I keep waiting to feel guilty, like I should be sadder or more upset. But mostly I just feel free." Jack's hand found hers. "That's because you are free. Really free this time. No bounty, no threats, no one trying to claim ownership of you." Sophie looked up at him, and something in his expression made her heart race. "What happens now? With us, I mean." "That depends. What do you want to happen?" "I want to stay, at the ranch, working with you. But," she hesitated. "But what?" "But I don't want it to just be about work anymore." Jack's breath caught. "Sophie." "I care about you, Jack. More than I should, probably. More than I plan to. And I know it's only been a few days, and I know you might not feel the same way. But I had to say it. Because I'm done not saying what I feel." Jack's hand tightened on hers. "You think I don't feel the same? You think I'd spend $800, face down your father and his hired guns, rebuild a burned barn, and ride into town ready to fight half the county if I didn't care about you?
I thought maybe you were just being kind, or trying to make up for losing Sarah.
It started that way, I won't lie. But somewhere between that auction and right now, it became about you. About Sophie Collins, who's braver than she knows and stronger than she believes. Who fed chickens with blistered hands and saved horses from a burning barn and faced down her father without flinching. That's who I care about. Sophie felt tears stinging her eyes again, but these were different.
I don't know how to do this, how to be in love. I've never had anyone treat me like I mattered before.
Then we'll figure it out together, just like everything else.
What if I'm not good at it?
What if you are? Sophie laughed through her tears. You always have an answer for everything. Not always, but I'm good at pretending. They walked out of the saloon together, and Sophie felt the morning sun warm on her face. People were still watching, still whispering, but she didn't care. Let them watch. Let them whisper. She had nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of. What do you want to do first? Jack asked as they mounted their horses.
I want to go home, to the ranch, and I want to start rebuilding what my father destroyed.
Our ranch, Jack corrected gently. If you're staying, it's ours.
Our ranch,
Sophie repeated, testing the words. They felt right. They felt true. They rode out of town together, side by side, and Sophie didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth seeing anymore. Everything that mattered was ahead. When they reached the ranch, Sophie dismounted and stood looking at the ruins of the barn.
It looks worse in daylight.
We'll rebuild it. Better than before.
How long will it take?
Couple months, probably. But we got help coming. Heard at least a dozen men promise to lend a hand. Sophie turned to face him.
Why would they do that? Help us.
Because people respect courage. And what you did today took more courage than most folks have in a lifetime. You stood up to your father, told the truth even when it hurt, and didn't back down. That matters to people. I was terrified the whole time. Brave and terrified aren't opposites. They're companions. Sophie walked to where the barn had stood and picked up a piece of charred wood.
My mother used to say that sometimes things have to burn down before they can be built back better. I never understood what she meant until now.
She was talking about more than barns.
I know.
Sophie dropped the wood and turned back to Jack.
I burned down my old life today. Every connection to who I was, who my father tried to make me be. And it feels right. It feels like I can finally breathe.
Jack closed the distance between them. So breathe, and then let's start building something new.
Something better.
Something that's entirely yours. Sophie smiled, and it felt natural, felt real.
Ours.
Jack's hand cupped her face, gentle despite the calluses. Yeah, ours. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious. Sophie had never been kissed before, never been held like she mattered. But standing there in the ruins of what her father had tried to destroy, being kissed by a man who saw her as an equal, she finally understood what freedom felt like. It felt like coming home. When they pulled apart, Jack rested his forehead against hers. We're going to be all right. You know that?
I'm starting to believe it.
Good. Because I need a partner I can count on. Someone strong enough to help me run this ranch, smart enough to call me on my mistakes, and brave enough to face down whatever comes next.
That's a lot of requirements.
Think you can handle it? Sophie's smile widened.
I know I can.
And she did know. For the first time in her 21 years, Sophie Collins knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. She was a woman who'd survived an auction, escaped her father's greed, saved horses from a burning barn, and stood up in front of an entire town to speak her truth. She was a woman who chose her own path, made her own decisions, and built her own future. She was a woman who was loved and who loved in return, not out of obligation or fear, but out of genuine choice. She was free. And that freedom, hard-won and fiercely protected, was worth more than any price her father had tried to put on her head. It was worth everything she'd endured and everything she'd fought for. Sophie looked at Jack, at the ranch they would rebuild together, at the life stretching out before them, and she knew with absolute certainty that she would never be sold again. Never be owned, never be anything less than exactly who she chose to be. She was Sophie Collins, and she belonged to no one but herself.